Hey folks, how are you today? Today, let me be the first to welcome you to Autism Rocks and Rolls. Now, before we get messed up, I'm not our psychiatrist. If you're starting diagnosed with autism, please see a physician. Always based on my experiences. As on the right to the intro natural, they're found on ytmp3.com. I also have a mission statement to review with all of you. The mission of Autism Rocks and Rolls is to take the stigma off of autism and other conditions that may think are disabilities. People on the spectrum are not broken and do not need to be fixed. Those that have conditions or abilities want to be pitied. There's nothing to be sorry about. I also have some people I'd like to thank. First, I need to thank my latest guest, Adrian Nassam, and C245, Bloom with Adrian. Let's try again. First, I need to thank my latest guest, Adrian Nassim, and C245, Bloom with Adrian Nassim for more information. But what a great lady with an adorable service dog. I also need to say that my latest guest, BJ Yoho, for the listeners, C142, Identical Yet Opposites by BJ Yoho. But if you're looking for inspiration, not just only to his podcast, but go to check out his TED Talk too about kindness and gratitude, which I'll post that in the show notes below. A while ago, my board and I had the annual post Summerfest meeting. We determined that this event was worth doing. We also spoke with our dear friend Elizabeth Monroe from the Doug Flutie Jr. Autism Foundation. After our meeting, it was clear that she would be helping with some upcoming projects. Several Thursdays ago, I participated in a podcast panel with Mitch Harley and his friends. This panel was about the generals of podcasting. Thank you, Mitch. I had a great time. I've even had the time to do some networking events with 3 new groups. First, I did free business networking through the Happy Business Project in the United Kingdom, then switched to the next one, which was EE through Exceptional Entrepreneurs, with the last one being the Virtual Professional Network Mixer through Tamar Bibbs. I did see a shiny bunch of new faces. And since the last episode, I've appeared on the Spread the Positive podcast with Trent Denson, the Living Well with Bad Habits podcast with married couple David and Ashley Shannon, the How to Heal podcast with Kai Muhammad, and the Beauty and the Mess podcast with fellow Hoosier Michelle Sims. What a great group of podcasts, everyone. Now, folks, we right back. We're going to hear an ad from the bar on Maryland Ridge, so let's get to it. There's the hidden gem in Eastern Greene County, folks. Fowler's Pumpkin Patch and the bar on Maryland Ridge Wedding Barn. Autism Rocks and Rolls is very proud to tell you about our friends Perry and Renee Fowler and their place of business. Both Fowler Pumpkin Patch and the bar on Maryland Ridge is a relaxing drive approximately 15 minutes from the heart of Bloomington, Indiana, and an hour south of Indianapolis. You can find them at 5347 South Greene County Line Road, Bloomington, Indiana, 47403. The property has numerous picture locations, including several rolling rustic fields, antique tractors, red and rustic barns, trees, and much more. Customized wedding packages are offered on their website. Their surrounding areas provides several hotels in which to have your guests stay in for your destination wedding. Also, Fowler's Pumpkin Patch is a family-owned and operational seasonal pumpkin patch. It's the perfect place to take your family for some fall fun. Enjoy picking out pumpkins, hay rides, or corn maids in a petting zoo. Call the Fowlers today at 812-327-4895 or 812-325-6022. All right, folks, we're back, and yes, you'll definitely hear the words I do at this wedding barn. Today, I interview the comeback coach, Richard Kaufman. After appearing on his podcast, Vertical Momentum Resiliency, I knew he would be coming on. Richard Kaufman is an Army veteran who has battled with drug addiction, alcoholism, PTSD, blindness, and even not having a roof over his head. Through his work as a coach and author, he has helped countless individuals navigate their own hero's journey from darkness to light. His book, A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light, chronicles his personal journey of overcoming challenges and finding success in both his personal and professional lives. Through sharing his story, he hopes to inspire and empower others to find their own path towards resilience and success. Please welcome the one and only Richard Kaufman to my show. Richard, my good friend, long time no see. How we been, man?
I'm so blessed to be able to call you friend and brother. I'm so grateful that I actually got to meet and chat with Mick Foley because of talking to you. So I just want to say thank you for starting that friendship.
Oh, not a problem. He's a great guy, isn't he, Mr. Foley? And for listeners, C145 Gain Hardcore with Mick Foley.
Amazing dude. And also, I love your show. I listen to every episode. My son is on the spectrum and he's doing very, very well. And he actually listens to your show also and gets a lot of tips and hints. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, man. So my first question to you is, what does having all the conditions you had, let's try that again, excuse me. With all the conditions you've had, because you've had a lot, PTSD and blindness and much more, we'll call it just a beautiful mixture of conditions. What does having all the conditions in one mean to you?
It means I'm grateful for what I do have and not grateful for what I don't have. And I don't call anything that I have going on. I call it a superpower. I don't call it a problem or a disorder. So that's the way I look at everything. I look at everything. If it's positiveness, I'm going to switch. Even if it's a negative, I'm going to switch it over to a positive. So some people say, well, I don't have half of my seeing, but my hearing is almost doubled. So I listen, I look for the positives instead of the negatives.
I do the same thing, man. I think there's always positives in negative situations. Even if you don't think there is, if you look really hard, there's going to be one little dot of light.
Yep, and that's something that my mentor, Mr. Ed Milet, said. He says that things happen to you. Things happen for you. They don't happen to you, and everything is a teachable moment. So I look at everything in my life has brought me to this exact moment, sitting on a podcast with Sam Mitchell. So everything that ever happened in my life has brought me to this moment, sitting with you.
Faith has a reason, man. It really does.
Me too. I'm all about it, brother.
Now, what were your initial thoughts when you saw you had your superpowers?
I had to figure out how I was going to use them because if Superman never came out of the telephone booth, who cares what powers he had? So I had to step out of the booth and figure out, okay, how am I going to use my mess, and how am I going to turn it into my message? So that's when I had to decide, well, what can I do to help other people that are struggling with what I'm dealing with, or maybe a lot more than I'm dealing with. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And there are a lot of people who are probably been in your situation or have not had all of these superpowers. They had one.
Yeah, and we're all. I don't care who you are. If you look at your friends in your circle, everybody is dealing with something, whether it's depression, anxiety, imposter syndrome. Everybody's dealing with something. So if we just put what we're dealing with out, there's people that are out there that are willing to help us. But we have to say, listen, I'm struggling with this. I need help with this. You know?
And it's the hardest thing, I think, sometimes. Asking help is the hardest thing to do here and there. Now, for me, it wasn't, but I know some people who are just like, I don't think I should.
Yeah, like I was struggling. Like when you first came on my show, you were one of my first guests, and now we're in the top 0.5%. And we've had over 8 million downloads. I mean, 800,000 downloads with 500,000 social media impressions. But I had to ask John Lee Dumas, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing, and I need help. So if I didn't humble myself, I wouldn't have been able to have somebody like you come on my show to start with.
I know it's incredible with help because we came back to a full circle. I think we were both in the beginning stages of the podcast when we first met, but now look at us, man. I'm in the top 200 podcasts in Canada. You're in the 0.5 area. That's saying something, right?
But it's all a matter of, like me and you do. We put in the reps. We fail a lot, and I think, but we fail forward. And I think a lot of people, people think that failure is a person, but failure is not a person. It's an event. So fail forward. If you're going to fail, and like some of my mentors said, if you want to succeed, you got to fail a lot. You know what I mean? So make sure you're failing forward whenever you do fail.
Oh, 100%, man. Now, with someone with your story, does it at all shape the way you operate?
Yes, I operate um, from a place of empathy because I've been there, I've done that, I feel that. So I want to help people that were in my situation or even worse situations because I know what it feels to be lonely. I know what it feels to be homeless. I know what it feels to be eating out of garbage cans and being addicted to drugs and alcohol. I know what it all feels like. So, and I try to keep it real every day. I try to keep it, well, that's, I know I remember where I come from and I don't take it for granted. So, but in order for me to be the man that I am today with a beautiful wife, beautiful house, three beautiful children, I have to remember that 3 years ago, 3 miles away from my house is where I was living in a crack house, eating out of dented cans that I found in the garbage. So I have to kind of keep it real, and that's what keeps me going. And I think that's, and for me, if, like Halloween's coming up, if I would be any have any be any Superman or superpower, it would be empathy man, because I'm the biggest empathy guy in the world. I feel pain for everybody and everybody, you know.
I would agree with that one, man. And empathy, man, sounds like your power for sure. But what would you do to, help out that's not shooting lasers?
Actually, my costume would be just a big E, and then it would be just a big guy, muscular guy with big shoulders that somebody can cry on and lean on, and really big friggin' ears where people can sit there and talk and listen. I would be able to sit and listen, not maybe not give advice, but just be there for somebody to be able to listen to and vent to. Because I think a lot of people, they need that guy or girl to sit there and listen and vent and just hear them out. Because there's a difference between hearing and active listening. And I think some people just need to be heard, not need to be talked down to or talked to, just need to be able to get some stuff out and be heard.
Yeah, but then there's some people out there who I'm not trying to say can't hear it, but once you hear it, they like to give advice. And sometimes we clearly don't need the advice, but it's something I work on to this day.
Well, me too. I went out with a cousin of mine and we went out for dinner, and um, she doesn't, she doesn't want to hear any of the advice. So eventually all right, I'm just going to stop giving it. I'm not even going to mention anything, because you're not going to, I call them ask holes, ASK hole. There's somebody that just ask and ask and ask. And then when you give them advice, they never follow through. So now I don't even give an opinion anymore. I just nod my head and be like, okay, you got the answers. I don't have the answers. So I'm just not even going to get involved in the conversation.
Right. It's a waste of time in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah, but if somebody says, you know what, Rich, I just need somebody to listen to me. All right, I'm good. And then if I listen, and then if I just ask a simple question, which I know the first answer, I know that if I ask somebody, if I say, Sam, how you doing? You're probably going to say, I'm all right. I'm doing okay. But then if I ask you, Sam, how you really doing, brother? Then a conversation opens. You know what I'm saying? So for me, that's the way I open. That's the way I have most of my conversations. I have somebody talk to me, then I just like, how you really doing? And then they open up to you because the curtain is down. They don't feel that there's a pressure that, oh my God, they're going to be speaking to me, and I got to hear their shit. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what is the most rewarding and the most difficult part about having these powers?
For me, it was losing two people that I really cared about, to suicide. And I've helped thousands or hundreds of thousands, but it's the two that I lost that haunt me every day. What can I have done? What could I said? But those two that haunt me also push me to push forward. So there's not a third. You know what I mean?
And I'm glad that, because I think we can all say that you learn from your mistakes. I mean, you can't take those two people back. You can't resurrect them. I wish you could, but there isn't just a way. However, I think what those guys would want you to do, or gals, depending on what gender they are, would want you to use the tools that they try to give you and help them out. Not them, others out.
Yep. And so that's why I do what I do, because, or yeah, that a man told me, he said a little boy was walking on the beach and he was picking up fish and throwing them back in the water. And an old man walked up to him and said, son, why are you doing that? You can't save them all. And the little boy got tears in his eyes. He looked up at the old man. He said, you see this fish? I'm throwing them back in the water. I can't save them all, but I just changed that one fish's life. So if I could change one fish's life, one person's life, then theoretically, I'm changing the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a fish that doesn't have to be eaten. There's no getting hooked. You just save someone from having the hook catching the fish with mental and physical damage.
Yep. So that's the way I look at it. I can't save them all, But if I can change one person's life, then it's going to create a ripple that eventually will change the world.
Mm-hmm. Now, what advice would you give to anyone who has had or is having your superpowers?
Enjoy them, and see what you can use them for good. Because a lot of people will say, well, you don't you feel bad because you lost 50% of your vision. And I think, well, no. I mean, if I wake up every morning and I can see something, it's going to be an amazing day. I actually wake up every morning with gratitude. If I can see something out of my eye, I say, Lord, this is going to be an awesome day. So I think we should just, take whatever our superpower is and amplify it. And like my friend Gary Vaynerchuk says, take whatever you're great at, triple down on it, and take whatever you're bad at and forget. He didn't use the forget word. He used another word, but just triple down on what you're great at and forget what you're not great at.
And when you do, you don't have any weaknesses. You all have strengths. You can ignore it. It's not even fatal anymore.
Yeah, because like I believe, I'm a big basketball fan. I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, and he once said to somebody, he's like, "I stay in that lane. I stay in my lane, but I dominate that MFer." So that's me. I'll stay in my lane, but I'm going to dominate. So I think that if you stay in your lane, but make sure you dominate your lane, you can't lose.
Yeah. And how can people dominate though? My way is taking opportunities. Is there another way though?
Well, first you have to figure out who is the top dog in whatever niche you're in. Find out what they're doing and then work backwards into finding how you can get up to that level. Because I think a lot of people, especially you start a podcast or you're thinking you start looking at the numbers that a little bit ahead of you, a little bit behind you, instead of looking at, okay, there's Ed Milet, there's Gary Vaynerchuk, there's the MF CEO project. What are they doing to get those numbers? And let me work backwards and try to get up to their standards. You know what I mean?
I can agree with you to a point, but what I don't want people to think is Richard Kaufman to be the next Gary V. I just don't want people to follow him completely. If they're going to idolize him and have a mentor, great, but they got to find a way to make their life, and not a Gary V's life 2.0.
Yeah, because I can't be Gary Vee, first of all. I can't curse that much. But I don't have the acumen that he has. But he also told me when me and him had lunch, he's like, there's only one Richard Kaufman. Everybody else is taken. He said, so just be you. I've been in recovery from alcohol for 34 years. And even in the rooms, they tell you, if you hear somebody's stories, take something that you can use and let something go that you can't use. So I just find all these different people. Like I've read over 6,000 books. So I take things from everybody that I learned from. Like you, I take something from somebody else, and then I'll apply it, and then start molding myself like Play-Doh into the man that I am today. So there's certain people that I like, but if you're a baseball, football player, if you start studying what made Peyton Manning so great, made Tom Brady so great, their mindset, even if you don't have the physical tools, but if you could take their studying, take their habits, and start adding them to whatever you're doing, it seems your life becomes a lot easier because you're more focused and you're studying from people that have already succeeded. You're not reinventing the wheel.
Right. I can agree with that. Because reinventing the wheel just means you're going back to yourself. Reinventing the wheel means that you have to start over, and no one should have to start over because of them. To a point, they need a restart because of them, but not by. Let me rephrase. They need a restart because of them, but not by force. That's by choice.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm a big, even though a lot of people don't like him, I'm a big Alex Hormozy fan. So, I've gotten all his books and I've gotten all his tapes and I've started studying. So if I can learn from the $500,000 mistakes that he's making, it's not going to cost me 500 grand because he already made the mistakes. I just have to learn from the mistakes that he made and the lessons that he learned. And I think a lot of people, they're so headstrong. Well, I want to make all the mistakes. Well, no, when you, eventually you're like, no, somebody else made the mistakes. Why do I want to make the same mistakes? I could just move light years ahead because I don't have to go through that. It's already been done for me.
You could be Buzz Lightyear, flying, going to infinity and beyond, literally.
Yep, exactly.
So, can you remind me though? How did you hear about Autism Rocks and Rolls again? I can't remember. One of us sent a message somehow. I know it was you or me, but who was it?
I I wanted to have you on the show because uh, I think I made a post because Mick Foley mentioned the podcast and he said talked about vertical momentum and you left a comment and then I started researching you and then I seen all the great things that you were doing and I was like, bro, I gotta have you on my show. And especially because my son is on the spectrum, I'm like this. And then I had my friend Tucker Bearden, which he's also on the spectrum, and now he's on his way to be a multi millionaire, and he's on the spectrum. So I'm like, I just had to have you on because you're such an inspiration to me.
Well, let's talk about your boy a little bit and your son, because I completely forgot about this. Apparently, I slept since then, but let's go into it a little more. So, what would you say when you did get the diagnosis as a father? What were you thinking?
For me, I was in a way I was grateful because first I knew what the issue was, and then it was like, okay, so he's going to be able because I struggled with really bad ADHD growing up, where I couldn't focus on anything. But my son, all of a sudden he's reading books at 2 years old, and he could tell me all about every dinosaur, fish, or animal at the age of 5. I'm like, that's his superpower. So let's dig in on what he loves and let's feed it, feed the superpower. You know what I mean? So that I looked at it as an opportunity to, if that's what he loves, all right, let's jam with it. And I never looked at it as a negative. I just looked at because if you look at people like, and I don't know if anybody's gonna say it or not. If you look at Elon Musk, you look at Zuckerberg, if they're not on the spectrum or he's even close to it, then I'd be really surprised with their because of their level of hyper focus. So I consider it a blessing from day one.
Or Temple Grandin for the listeners. C124 pictures on the ranch from Temple Grandin, but those people like Temple Grandin and your son and myself are the ones who want to do something. They want to help out. They want to expand on their knowledge and their niche. And they're not just going to sit around and be the average farmer.
Yeah, because and if they are going to be a farmer, they can like my son. He's in school at Coastal Carolina. He's in his senior year. He's going to be a marine biologist and a shark specialist. But if he was working on a farm, he'll be able to tell you the gestation period of every single animal. He'll be able to tell you everything you need about every animal on the farm. And I think that's a superpower. For me, that's a superpower.
Oh, yeah. And I think your son is going to change the world in marine biology. He's probably going to come up with an invention that's going to save the ocean and, may I guess, dolphins or any other sea animal
Yep.
because he
And
has
that's
that
why,
mindset and he
yep.
can think of
Yep.
stuff in ways that we can't think of things.
Yep. And like I said, even as a child, I was like, all right, if that's what you love, let's zero in on that. Cause I know a lot of parents, if it's see a kid starting to like art, or cartoon drawing or anything, they start, oh, try this, try that. No, if that's what they really love, get them in classes, get them involved, get them really, if they're hyper focused, just build onto that. Like I said, my daughter is so she's probably on the spectrum if we tested her right now, but she's such an amazing artist, and I'm pushing her. I'm like, hey, if that's what you love and you enjoy it, do it. You might be one of the most amazing tattoo artists ever in history. But if you love something, I'm going to push you to love it. I don't care what anybody else says about it. If that's what you enjoy doing, and if that's what you hyper focus on, I'm gonna push you towards it, not push it away from you.
Yeah, and it's very aggravating that tattoo artists get judged on a side note because it's an art. People with tattoos are not the most evil person. I mean, I hate to say it, but there are times where I've been a little hesitant because of the tattoos and I don't know them. And I clearly need to stop, duh. But I just hate that that was taught to me.
But now there's tattoo artists, like I go to see some conventions, they're making $300 an hour. Told that was stupid idea, don't do it. So, like I said, if I mean, who would ever think that you'd be the top podcast, one of the top podcasters in the world? If somebody, but you kept putting your nose to the grindstone, you love it, you studied it, you hyper focused on it, and now you're one of the best to ever do it.
Yeah, and people, I stuck my nose where it did belong, in a sense.
Yeah, but I think that's because if you don't love something, I mean, say if a person becomes a lawyer, if they don't love it, they're going to do it for the paycheck. But when they get home, they're not going to be happy. They're not going to be fulfilled. They're not going to feel whole. So you need to really find out what you do love, and then you got to figure out how I can make money off of it, and how I can make a career out of that. You know what I mean? You have to be able to scale it. So that's something people really have to start looking down. Okay, I might like to do this, but I got to figure a way to make it scalable.
A what? A scalable?
Yeah, make it scalable. If you're somebody that likes one little thing, I mean, there's a niche for it, but it has to be a niche that you're going to be able to pay the bills. You're going to want to eat sometimes. You might want a car, so you kind of got to figure out a way where it's scalable, where you can actually make money to afford your hobby.
Oh, okay. That makes more sense. Okay. Gotcha. So you also are the podcast host of the Vertical Momentum of the Resiliency podcast. So why do you think the Vertical Momentum Resiliency podcast is needed?
Because we all need resilience in our life, no matter what it is. Whether you're a kid, whether you're a veteran, a first responder, a CEO, we're all dealing with the same crap. We're all dealing with, in sometimes like a lot of people that they deal with. Am I the right person? Am I the right person that should be interviewing millions and millionaires and billionaires and athletes and authors? Am I the right person that should go for this job, even though I'm not qualified, but I think that I can do a good job for this company and offer something that other people can't. And I think imposter syndrome is a very, very big thing, especially with me, because anybody I have on the show, I want to make sure that they're relatable. And for me, who do I ever think? Why would I, as a ninth grade dropout, didn't even finish, I'm eighth grade dropout, why would I be able to interview, millionaires, billionaires, authors, and athletes? Who do I think I was? Until I took a course on imposter syndrome and I had them on the show. So now what the show is about, it's about anybody struggling in life and business, because we're all struggling with something. So that's why the show is a little bit different, because it's real. It's what people have been through and how they got out of it. Because a lot of times people will tell you, well, I'm a top podcaster. Yeah, well, how'd you get there? What were some of your failures? How'd you get through it? That's what I want to know. I don't care so much about the front story. I'm more about the backstory. You know what I mean?
You're a behind the scenes guy, aren't you?
Oh, I'm very behind the scenes. This is what I do. This is my passion. And like when I had you on my show, I listened to every single episode you ever put out, because I want to know who Sam is, who the real Sam is. And that's the difference between my guests on my show. I mean, I'll go back. I've even talked to some people, college roommates, and they give me some dirt on some of the people that I've had on my show. They're like, "Wait a minute, you went that far back?" And I was like, "Yep, yes, I did." And
Well, it
it
was
makes it
funny too. I had one of my guests, Ben Waits, for the listeners. See what episode was that? Yep, 226, Following Faith with Ben Waits. But he was on the Faith Fourth Radio. And when I had him on the show, he was an adult. But when he was on that radio program, it was college time for him. So I had to go all the way back and learn about it. He was like, "How the heck did you find that?" "Oh, it's on YouTube, dude." And I'm like, "Yeah, YouTube's crazy, isn't it?"
Yeah, like when I had Steve D. Sims on, and everybody knows Steve D. Sims from the book Blue Fishing. But every time he has somebody come on the show, they always ask him about him being, best friends with Elton John. And when he came on the show, I didn't ask him anything about that. I wanted to know what it was like being a 17-year-old bricklayer, being poor and laying bricks even though he's married, he's still with his wife today, Claire, from when he was 17 years old. He's like, how'd you find out about that? I was like, because I want to ask questions that nobody else asks. And then he goes, aren't you going to ask me about Elton John? I was like, nope, not going to do it. And we were able to sit and chat for 45 minutes. And he actually shared that episode to his huge audience because I asked him questions that nobody else even asked.
Well, I'm going to agree to disagree. I'm going to agree to disagree with you on that one, Richard, because I think in a good interview, this is just my structure. I think you have keeper questions, like the ones with what is the most rewarding, the most difficult about having your superpowers. I've always asked that because I want to know what has been the best part of it and the worst part. But and then the end, it's just for fun, which we'll get into more later. But I always keep that structure because I think we need to have fun in the end. We got to for the audience to loosen up a little bit.
Yeah.
And but the middle is different because everyone has their own story, and that's what I love about the podcast. And just saying that, I feel like I broke the fourth wall.
That's what makes you successful. That what makes people like me, people like Gary Vaynerchuk, people like Ed Milet. That's what makes it them successful because it's not just fluff. It's real. It's real talk, but it's a conversational thing. I've been on a lot of podcasts where they ask you scripted question after scripted question, and I'm like, bro, are we gonna have a conversation, or is it just like a speed date? You know what I mean?
Right. Why do I know this? When you first started the Vertical Momentum Resiliency podcast, what do you wish you would have known when you were first starting it?
All right. And I tell this and I laugh at myself because first of all, there's no shame in my game. If you ever see, I just put a picture out yesterday, me wearing a purple long blonde wig for no reason, just because I felt goofy. So I'm always going to be that crazy guy that you know. But I had a podcast called Success Your Why, Powers Your How. And I had 300 episodes recorded and put out, never even realizing it was never even on iTunes. After 300 episodes. Oops. So I had to start. Yes. That's how bad of a podcaster I was. So now I had to start Vertical Momentum all the way from scratch, knowing nothing except how to interview people. And I had to start all over. And I talked to the people at Apple. I'm like, I want to get that show put on Apple. You're like, yeah, 300 episodes. I don't think so. So
But what's great though is that tragedy worked out for you because now look at where you are with the Vertical Momentum Reels. Look where you are compared to now. You are now a top 0.5 with the strategy again. It's definitely funny, but in a way that tragedy led you to something great because I bet you like doing the Vertical Momentum Resiliency podcast better than the first one because now you know to publish on Apple, A, but B, you get to show more empathy to other people.
Yeah, and now I actually teach courses on starting podcasts, how to monetize them and all that. But I had to go through it all. And I still every Friday I still release an episode from the old podcast. I just call it Flashback Fridays. And I got a lot of great episodes that I still put out, and I still put them out every week. So and I can see the difference between now and then, because then it was just an audio, but now I do video, audio, YouTube, and now we're on like 14 different social media platforms. But I can either see the way I interview people, how it's changed. A lot of the ums, the ahs, the oohs, I can hear and I still cringe. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Or I shouldn't overtalk my guests, which I used to do a lot until my wife said, hey, dumbass, stop doing that. So you learn a lot. You live, you learn.
Yeah, and where can people find your podcast? You said it's on YouTube and
everywhere
else.
Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Tumblr, Flickr. Now we're on, of course, Twitter. We're on Apple, iTunes. I think we're on like 14 or 18 different social media platforms, but the biggest is Spotify and iTunes.
Gotcha. I'll make sure to put them in the show notes for you so people can check her out, man. I'll do that for you. Don't worry about it.
I appreciate it.
Of course. So you also you are a recovering alcoholic and a person who used drugs. So when did you start using drugs and alcohol as a coping mechanism?
Well, I first because I when I grew up, my dad left at 3. My mother was an addict, but she was also a nurse, so I was left off with babysitters and all that. So I was left to my own devices a lot. I had my first drink on New Year's Eve at 11, and I was a full blown alcoholic by the age of 13. And because I figured out, all right, before I have that drink, I'm richer. But once I have that liquor flowing, I become Rick, and I became a whole other person. I had that whole other superpower. I could, I was funny. I was outgoing. I was gregarious. I had no fear. But then once I got sober, wasn't drinking anything, I became Richard again and hiding in the closet and being afraid of life. So that's where I started, was just to become somebody else because I didn't like the person that I was.
Well, I know that you said the old Richard was hiding in the closet, but when you had alcohol, you became Richard that you would describe as gregarious. Do you still have personality traits of the old Richard? Maybe not to the point where you're like hiding in the closet, but maybe you still do. I don't know. But do you have traits like has your past not became your present, but has your past came with you still, even though you've changed a lot?
Um,
Like,
for
has your
me,
bad gone? Like, do you still have some bad parts in yourself, even though you're a good Richard now?
if I have to become that bad guy, I'm able. Like if I tell, I have a lot of friends, and they go out and they get in tussles and stuff like that in a bar or whatever, and I'm like, if I go out and I get in a fight with somebody, I'm going to kill that person because that's how I was trained in the military for 23 years. So if I have to defend my family or anything, I could become that bad guy once again, but I'm not going to stay that bad guy. And I think, that's the difference between like world champion kickboxers, martial artists. They know what they can do. They just don't have to act like they can do it. Because I always believe if you're driving a Bugatti, you don't have to act like you could do 100 miles an hour. Everybody knows you could do 100 miles an hour. So you could do 55 and still cruise. You know what I mean? So I don't have to be that old guy. But if he has to come out, it's gonna be nasty. And he
Right.
hasn't come out,
Good.
thank
There's a
God.
difference between a good martial artist and a bad martial artist too. A bad martial artist walks around and brags, says, "Yeah, I'm a black belt," and then kicks people for no apparent reason. Right. A good martial artist will use it, but if it's needed, if it's not needed, then there's going to be on the beach with the beach ball.
Exactly. But you have to know, okay, well, I know, like I was in the octagon. I know what I can do, but I don't want to do it. But if somebody did almost start something one when we were in Vegas, and I just whispered in his ear, I was like, you don't want to do this because you're not going to survive it. And then we just walked away. But if I didn't know, okay, you can do this, I'm not going to start anything anyway. You know what I mean? So, and I think, like you said about, I think even Bruce Lee said something, and I'm paraphrasing. The best thing about martial arts is not having to fight. You know what I mean? Because
Oh,
sometimes
I would agree
discretion
with
is a
that.
bit.
You know what the best part is? The discipline,
Yeah,
self respect, standing still for once in your life. And I say that because we both can relate since we have ADHD. We probably can't still for the life of us or stand still because it feels like we're staying on eggshells.
yeah, and that's why I think for me, my son, as I'm actually looking at his awards, he's got a lot of awards for in my office for martial arts, and I think him taking martial arts as a young boy, trained him to be the ass kicking kid in college right now.
Oh yeah, I bet people. I bet people are like when he comes down the street. Yee, let's take a step back.
Oh, he's a good kid, but he's the kind of guy that both my sons are amazing. I got one kid in East Stroudsburg University, just started as a freshman. Well, my other son's a senior in college. But both of my kids, they have the heart of service to where they make friends with everybody, whether they're the football team, whether they're the jocks, the burnouts. They're friends with everybody. So they'll never have a drama issue because everybody likes them and everybody protects them. You know what I mean?
Wow, they're better than me, I think.
Yeah,
So
like
I want to talk more
that's
about a certain story that I found on a certain podcast. I'm going to call it the 1989 New Year's Eve story. It was one
mm,
story that you had where you feel like you either A, decided to become sober or B, had a realization.
yeah. 1989, I got kicked out of the military and I had to find a job. Mom made me, in order to get back in the house, I had to go back, either go to get a job and go back to school. So I went to school for be a bartender now. That's not, if you're an alcoholic, going to school to be a bartender is not the greatest thing you can do. But I aced the course because I knew everything about alcohol. But I graduated from bartender school, and the first job that I got offered was at a bar owned by a police officer here in town. And I wish I remember his name. I wish I remember his face because I'd go up and I'd give him the biggest, sloppiest kiss. I would buy him dinner. I'd go decorate his house for Christmas, whatever he wanted. Because I took the job and it was New Year's Eve 1989. And everything's going great. I'm bartending and I start drinking a little and we're having a great time. And then uh, 8 hours later, him and his buddies come knocking on my door, coming to lock me up because I gave away like $3,000 worth of free drinks and I pocketed like 5 grand. And they were coming to lock me up. They were going to put me in jail for 5 years for grand larceny at the age of 20. I wasn't even able to drink yet. But he said, you know what? And I don't like to use this word on camera, but it, it might touch somebody. He said, you know what, Rich, you're a 20 years old white boy. He says, if I put you in state prison right now, you're going to be somebody's bitch, and your life is going to be over. He said, but I'm going to give you an opportunity. I'm going to give you 24 hours to get my money back, which I did. I begged, I borrowed. I didn't steal, but I begged and borrowed. I paid it all back, every single penny. And he said, you got to go to 90 meetings in AA for 90 days, starting today. And I think I hit 300 meetings in a row, and I haven't had a drink since that day in 1989. So I had to make the decision. Like my shirt, you guys can't see it, but my shirt says, today I decided. And that day I decided, well, either I'm going to go to jail, my whole life's going to be over, or I can go to AA, sit in a meeting, sit eating stale cookies, drinking nasty coffee with 40, 50-year-old guys. Or I had to pick the lesser of two evils. And so I went to that first meeting and I realized, hey, I'm not the only one that's struggling with this. And I haven't had a drink or drug since that day in 1989. So I had
Right.
to make that
Even though you
decision
didn't end up in
today.
prison that time, right. But even though you didn't end up in prison that time, you still ended up in prison somehow, right?
Well, I in the military, I got locked up for I got thrown out of the military for being a drug addict and an alcoholic, and then I got back in again, and then I was about to be thrown out for a second time, but because of what transpired on the morning of 9/11, 8:54 on 9/11, is what changed my whole life and changed the whole trajectory of my life after 8:54.
Right. And I am so, I shouldn't say I'm happy that 9/11 happened, but I am happy 9/11 happened for you in particular. Because, buddy, I would not want to see you up in bars. I think you would be better off here than in there.
Yep. And I think, and I tell it, I did the greatest day in my life, not because of what happened, but the greatest day in America was 9/12, because that's the day that everybody was an American. There was no other American before. There was no Afro American, no Asian American. We were all Americans. They sold out of flags the first 3 hours, because that day everybody was an American. So that, I think 9/12 was our greatest day. 9/11 was our worst day.
Right. So let's talk to you more about your military experience. But the first thing we do is for my first veteran I've had too. Thank you for your service. I know that you probably sometimes you probably didn't think you did enough due to the fact that according to yourself you said you were a dirtbag, but you were still in there, and I appreciate you doing that, man. I really do. I really, really do.
Thank you, brother. Yeah, I was, because that's one thing people always know about me. I'm never going to sugarcoat anything. I was the worst soldier you would ever meet. I was a dirtbag, but the reason they kept me for so long, I stayed in for 2.5 years, even though I got in trouble like on a daily basis, because I was the guy that would do anything. If you told me you needed a wall built and just work 24 hours straight, okay, I got you. Whatever you need me to do, I got you. It was just when we were hanging out with all the other officers that I got in trouble. But if you put me out in the field, if you put me out on a tank, I'm good. Just keep me out there. And I could, because the alcohol
Just don't
wasn't
put you
out
with
there.
people, right?
Well, just put me away from the alcohol, because that once I had that drink in me, I was no longer Richard Kaufman. I was Rick Kaufman, and
Exactly.
that's
Right,
when
right, right.
that's when it all goes sideways once that Rick comes out.
Gotcha. Well, you did join through an Army recruiter. So what about the Army recruiter made you decide to join the Army?
Well, for me, it was, I'm 17 years old. I got thrown out of high school for hitting a teacher in the head with a desk. So it's kind of like, all right, jail, jail or military. So I joined the military. I kind of did both, jail and the military. But because I was walking past a recruiter, and they had these big TV screens out front, and there was tanks jumping over ditches, blowing stuff up. I'm like, oh yeah, I would love to do that. So that's why I joined, because I was like, I would love to do that. Plus, I never planned to live to the age of 21. So I figured, let's just enjoy life. Let's go out, travel the world, and party. And if I'm not going to live past 21, at least let's make it a big party.
You know what? In your case, that's a smart thought, because I'll tell you, Richard, even though at that point it sounds like you were screwed up, that is one smart thought you have.
Why? Why would that be smart?
Well, you said that let me explain. So you said that you thought that you wanted to enjoy life, right? By going by clearly because you didn't think you were going to live past 21.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go enjoy life, because you're like, oh man, this is so cool. So in that sense, you, in my opinion, made a smart decision with that.
Well, and
Does that make any sense?
oh, definitely. And the thing is, um, I got to do so many cool things in the military. I mean, I actually got to go to Oktoberfest in Germany in October at the age of 17. I got to roadie for Joan Jett. I got to hang out with General Petraeus. I actually got to go to Germany and see a lot of the stuff that happened where Hitler, where the gas chambers, and actually got into some places that you're not supposed to go. So I got to get a lot of life experience, even at the age of 17, 18, and 19. And I still take it with me today, because I have friends that we're 50. I'm 54 now, and they haven't left the town. And when I tell them, yeah, I actually got to go in and go to Auschwitz and be able to smell the smells and see the fingernails. People don't have those experiences. And if I didn't do that at that time, I wouldn't have those experiences. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's exactly
So,
what I was trying to get around through.
yeah,
That's what I was trying to say right there.
yeah,
Thank you for clearing that up. I was trying to say, but it couldn't come out right.
yeah. So, like I said, for me, it was a blessing. And then when I got back in, and I was given a 50th chance, and that's when my whole life started taking off. But that's when I realized it's a blessing. I get to do stuff that only, I mean, being a veteran, we are the ultimate minority. Everybody talks about minority this, minority that. Only 2% of the population have ever served this country. 2%. So look, they can think of that minority. So when people say, I've done this, I've done that, like, yeah, well, I'm in the 2%. You know what I mean? So, I tell everybody, it was the greatest honor for me to serve this amazing country.
Yes, God bless America, man.
Amen.
Really, I'm can't think. Can you tell us real quickly what branches you were in though?
I was in the United States Army from 86 to 88, and then got back in 1990 in Army National Guard, and then I stayed in until 2012 when I was involved in a training accident that took my vision.
Okay, let's go into that while we're thinking about it. So how did where the heck is that? There it is. How did you become let's try again. So let's get into that. Do you ever miss the sense of sight? Even though you can see a bit.
I do, um, but I look at it as a blessing because I wouldn't have what I have right now, and I wouldn't appreciate what I have because there's nothing. The day before I got hurt, I mean, my military career was humming. I was running $1 million company, working with players from the NFL and Major League Baseball, WWE. About to get married. My life was on a high trajectory, and then the next morning, I can't see anything. And then for the next 18 months, my wife had to take me to the bathroom, had to prepare all my meals, all my drinks. So it really humbled me to my core because I'm at the top of the world one day, and then I can't even wipe my own ass the next day. So it really humbled me, and it made me appreciate every little thing that I have in my life. If I'm able to see color, the first day I cried when they went for surgery, and I was able to see a blue light. Something simple as a blue light, I broke down and cried like a 3-year-old because I was able to see color again. So it makes me appreciate all the little things I appreciate, no matter what it is. And it changed my perspective into thinking. I changed the words that I use from I have to I get to. Like I got mad last week or a couple weeks ago. I had to take out the garbage and it was raining and I was pissed off. And I'm out there and I kicked the garbage can and I looked to my left and there's my beautiful house. And I got me thinking, wait a minute, you're taking out the garbage in front of your new house where, 30 years ago, you're living in a crack house, eating out of the garbage cans. So that's that. From that moment, my mind switched to everything instead of I have to, it's I get to. And it just changed my whole life.
And your house is better than going from house back to on the streets where you don't have a roof over your head. Yeah, I remember that too.
But I also realized that I'm one drink away. I'm one drug away from losing everything. So I keep that in perspective of my life. Everything that I have is a gift. My bride is a gift. My children are a gift. This house is a gift. My podcast everything is a gift. And I'm just grateful to receive it. And I want more. Of course, I want a vacation home. I picked out a new boat I want. I picked out a new truck I want. But everything is a gift. And I think if we look at the universe and say, universe, thank you for the gifts, it gives you more because you're thankful and you're grateful.
I would agree with that, man. But I do want to talk to you more about the point where you were homeless. So, how did you get to the point where you were homeless?
The crazy thing was, I had a job, and this was back in '89. I was bringing home $1,000 a week cash money, $1,000 a week, and I would get my paycheck. I'd get hammered. I'd get drunk or stoned. I would get robbed. I would lose my money. So by the end of Friday into Saturday, I'm back to having no money again. And this happened weekly, monthly, yearly. So this was just the point of addiction. So it wasn't even, I had the money. It was just, it either went up my nose, it went thank God I never shot anything, but it went up my nose, or I drank it all. Like I would sit, I would go out and, drink 30, 40 kamikazes in a night. I mean, I was that bad of an alcoholic. And then I would just pass out and crawl home 3 miles away. So that's where my money went. And until eventually, somebody intervened, and that young police officer saved my bacon.
He did. Did you, when, even though you didn't, did you still get the life necessities like the food, shelter, and bed? If you didn't, how did you get them?
Well, I actually, I was living in a crack house. So at the time, I would work, but then I would have to go rummaging because I blew all my money. All I had was the gas money to work. So I knew there were certain grocery stores. I knew when they would throw out the dented cans, and they take because on dented cans, they take the labels off. Then they just throw them in the garbage. And I knew what days they threw them out. So I would go dumpster diving, grabbing food, and then every day was different because I didn't know what I was eating. So whenever I opened up the can, it was like, surprise, that's what you're having for dinner, buddy. So that's how um, I survived. And the thing is, my mother lived like 5 blocks away from me. And because they offered me, and my dad's passed now, but they offered me to come back into the house if I would get my life straight. But for me, here I am. I'm 20 years old. I just traveled the world. I just hung out with. I traveled with Joan Jett. I partied in every continent, and now you want me to be in bed or come home by 10 o'clock because mom and dad got to be up at 5 to go to work. And they're like, "Well, then you can't stay here." So I can't blame them. So everything in my life is like what's his name? Grant Cardone says in his book, everything is my fault, and I accept responsibility for anything that's ever happened to me. So if anybody is listening to this, I take it full responsibility. It's nobody else's fault. So for me, I had to do what I had to do to survive, and I think it taught me to appreciate it. But even like we went out for dinner, when I go out for dinner with my cousins, I order on purpose lobster tail and a filet mignon every time, even if I don't want it. It just reminds me, okay, you're eating garbage out of the garbage can. Today you're eating surf and turf. Life is good, but don't forget where you came from. You know what I mean?
No, you never forget where you come from. There's a good point with that, Richard. Gordon Ramsay, he came from the worst of it all. But I thought his foul mouth was just because of that's his personality. But after learning his story, I get it. I 100% get why he has his mouth and he's telling people to F off because he never forgot where he came from. He got hit with a belt for the simplest little things, getting a milk out of the refrigerator.
Yeah, just like even if a lot of people don't I didn't like Grant Cardone. I hated him until I watched an interview when he told him about how he grew up and how he was living on the street as an addict and how entrepreneurship saved him and how he recovered. And that's why I like him now. But because a lot of people don't know the backstory. And I think sometimes, the backstory is sometimes better than the front story.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I think his story, where he came from, is more inspiring than what we see now. Did he create Hell's Kitchen? It's cool. Yes, it's cool. But I think is his story and how he got to Hell's Kitchen better? Yes.
And even like backstories like, Mick Foley, even when you look back in his backstory, he was getting paid like $10 a night. He was jumping off his own roof, making videos. I mean, and he tells you, well, I had to pay my dues. So that inspires me more than, watching him jump off his roof than when he jumped off Madison Square Garden. You know what I'm saying? So his backstory is more important, is more inspiring to me than his front story. Like Mr. John Lee Dumas, which I've had on my show. Everybody knows him as one of the top podcasters in the world, making over $300,000 a month from his podcast. But a lot of people don't realize that he was a tank commander in Iraq that lost the whole tank crew, and that he went through mental health issues, including um, suicidal ideation. So his backstory means more to me than the front story.
I would agree. And here's the deal, too. He's not the only who thought of suicide. I'm looking at another one right now that did. So I want to know who or what stopped you from ending your own life.
Now you can make me cry. Thanks. uh, my 6-month-old daughter, to tell you the truth, because what happened was I got hurt on duty, and they put you certain. You had to go to certain classes for like a year or so until they medically discharge you. And then on Labor Day 2012, they came to me, called me in the office, and said, Sergeant Kaufman, you are no longer a member of the United States military. You're no longer Sergeant Kaufman, and took my ID. And for 23 years, that was my identity. That was who I was. So if there's no Sergeant Kaufman, there's no Rick, because Rick died on 9/11. Who's Richard? And that literally scared me to death. And so at that moment is when I decided, I'm going to end it all. So I called my wife. I said, I was supposed to meet her down the shore that day. I said, I'm on my way. I'm going to meet you down the shore. And the hardest part was I knew I was never going to hear her voice again. I knew I was never going to see my daughter's baby blue eyes. She was 6 months at the time. I said, I knew I'm never going to see that little girl again. I said, because I'm a failure. I'm a failure as a husband, a father. If I can't be Sergeant Kaufman, then I'm a total failure. And I got in the car and I decided I bought a brand new truck. And I was like, you know what? Because in New Jersey, we have these highways for big concrete pylons on both sides. I said, I'm just going to get this truck up to 100 miles an hour. I'm going to put it on cruise control. And I'm going to turn the radio on, shut the eyes. And then when it goes off the road, it's going to hit a pylon, and that's going to be it. So I got in the car. I told my wife I loved her. Said I'll see you in a little bit, and got in the car. Got up the car to truck up to 100 miles an hour, which is not hard to do in a brand new Dodge Ram 1500. Put it on cruise, and closed my eyes and turned up the radio. For some reason, and I'm a heavy metal guy, but for some reason I had country on. I don't know what that was all about. But as I'm starting to hear, the car starts moving to the right. I could feel it moving. I could feel it. It's going. It's not going to be too long. And then the song by George Strait came on. I Saw God Today. And picture me holding her in the hospital, because I was the first one to ever hold her or change her diaper. And I just broke down and cried. And I grabbed the wheel and turned it and said, you know what? Today I decided to be a daddy and a husband. And I got on the side of the road. Told my wife, I said, told her what happened. And I said, honey, I need help. I said, if I don't get help, I'm going to go home and blow my brains out. She said, okay, just come to me. And then I spent a weekend with them. And then that Tuesday, because it was a Monday for the holiday, that Tuesday, I seen my therapist for the first time. And I've been seeing the same therapist for 12 years now. So, and for that was the day, another one of those, today I decide I could either be a statistic or I could be a daddy and a husband. I chose to be a daddy and a husband.
And that one sounds like a lot better option, in my opinion.
Yeah, but because now my show I've had, like I said, I think I'm up to almost 1,100 interviews, and I've talked to a lot of psychologists and therapists and a lot of people that have gone, suicide, either be victims of their parents committing suicide or almost committing suicide. And me and my wife were just talking about this morning, that when a person takes their own life, they're just taking their pain and transferring it to everyone around them. And that I didn't want to do. I didn't want to have my daughter to grow up thinking, did my daddy not love me enough not to take his life? Or my wife had to figure, if I would have took my own life, what could she have said on the phone that day that would have saved, that would have changed it? So that's why I do what I do today. Now it's to let people know that, it's okay not to be okay. And I got you. I got your back. I'm here for you. I got big shoulders and big ears. So I got your back. I've been there and I've done it. And I'm just here for anybody that's struggling.
Man, that is a story for the ages, man. Because first of all, I'm very happy, but I am curious. It's kind of for fun, but did you have you had now like an more respect for country music because of that situation?
Yeah, actually, I started digging into a lot of country, because I became a guitar player. I started playing guitar, and I started really listening to country because there's so many stories. They're great storytellers, and being being in a podcast, writing copy, and doing all this stuff, and having interviews. It's all about you know, facts will tell, but stories sell. So I came into listening to a lot of the great storytellers like Tim McGraw. Um, there's so many, Alan Jackson, so many great storytellers. Garth Brooks. You listen to his music, it's like watching a movie in your mind. So yeah, I found a big respect in
And
country
here's the cool
music.
part too. I agree with you. But because I like music better than movies, because movies give you the movie in a sense. They're showing you the film. You can watch it. I don't want to do that. I want to make my own film.
Yeah, and I love that. That's why I like podcasting. A lot of people, like when I walk in the morning, I listen to an Audible. I'm listening to a Gary V Crush It Again for like the 10th time. But for me, I like it because I can get in my own mind, create the story, listen to it like I'm sitting next to Gary, and I seem to absorb it a lot more than I do if I'm just reading a book, because it actually puts me in that situation. I think that's why I loved reading so much. Growing up as an abused child, because I would, at 6 or 7 years old, I would go into the bathtub, fill it up, and then I'd lay down in the water so my ears are covered so I didn't hear the screaming and the yelling. And I would just pick up a book and read it. And I realized that if I can read a book, I can go anywhere in the world that I want to go. And I guess that's why I've had, such a love of reading with over 6,000 books now. So for me, it's a way of escape, and like you said, you can hear, like, the great thing about being blind, it's not great, but we watched the Game of Thrones, and I got to listen to everything, because you miss so much by watching that you didn't get if you just listened to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that was one thing I find a blessing, that even with my limited vision, that my hearing got a lot better, and I think it's really maybe a much better podcast host, because now I can really focus on the person's speech patterns. I actually count the number of times they say a certain word and then key on it. So for me, the hearing has become like one of my superpowers because of being with a limited vision.
Right. I understand that. Now I want to talk more about something you do have as well, your PTSD. And this is kind of a gift. You said your PTSD is a blessing. It's a blessing to know that you're actually my first guest with PTSD.
Wow. But now I am going to correct you. Um, I have post traumatic stress growth. I don't believe it's a disorder. So when I talk to people now, they say they have PTSD, and then after they get done talking to me, they realize that they have post traumatic growth instead of post traumatic stress.
Okay, well
Because
let's change it then. Let's call it post traumatic growth then. How about that? Just for you, man.
because a lot of people, and I think we need to start realizing, that things happen to us, and once we take it and dissect it, say, okay, this is what happened. This is not my fault, and this is how I'm reacting to it, and then this is what I'm learning from it. So a lot of people will just take the first part. Well, this is what happened to me, but they don't. Like I did a post out today about forgiveness, and how sometimes veterans and first responders do and see stuff that we should never have to do and see. So a lot of it has to do with forgiveness of people that hurt us, people that we hurt, and then people that then we have to forgive ourselves for the things that we've done, because then we can move on a little bit. But if we're still stuck watching that one movie, we don't change. If we, well, I'm old school. As you can tell, I'm an old guy. So we used to have something called tapes, you know. So if you don't change that VCR tape, it's just going to play over and over and over again. And your brain, once you hear the same thing over and over, it actually strengthens. So you eventually have, if you want post traumatic growth, you have to take that tape out and then figure out what happened to me. Get the forgiveness part, and then what did I learn from that, and who can I help with that? So, and that's why I believe there's no such thing as crazy. It's just levels of pain, and we never really talk about
it. All right, I'll remember that, man. That's very inspiring. So I actually want to know about your nickname, the Comeback Coach. So why does the nickname Comeback Coach represent you?
But you can thank Mr. Gary Vaynerchuk. We actually had lunch together, and I was telling him my story. And then because he's a big sports guy, he's a big New York Jets guy. And, and I said, I've been in the health and fitness industry for, 30 years at that point. I help people from the NFL, Major League Baseball, WWE, world heavyweight champion boxer, come back from injuries. And I said, but I've also, and I told him my story, I said, coming back from drug addiction, alcoholism, and all that stuff. And he goes, so you're the comeback coach, huh? And I was like, huh? He's like, yeah, I guess if you say I'm the comeback coach, if Gary Vaynerchuk calls you something, it sticks. So that's when I started, really thinking about it, everything that I've been through. But it's not just having the name of a coach, it's being able to coach somebody through it. Anybody could be a coach. Like I laugh all the time. I see somebody on Instagram, you're 20 years old and you're a life coach. All right, tell me about the life that you lived at 20 years old. Now, if you're a fitness coach, yeah, I get it. But if you're a life coach, tell me about, how it is to have the wife and the kids and have marital problems. Tell me about it when you're not married. So, so being a coach, just having a name doesn't mean anything. It's just being able to coach somebody. So Gary Vaynerchuk is the one that came up with the comeback coach. So I always give a shout out and love to Gary. And actually, if you watch some of his old videos, my Wounded Warrior hat is actually hanging. You can see it hanging in his office on some of his old videos.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty cool, man. I think knowing your story, I think you're the official comeback coach, because I think we can finally put you in anywhere and you do really good at something. That's survive and prevail.
Yeah, but like, it's not about me, and I tell this to everybody. Like a lot of people say, well, you got to, you're a 2-time best-selling author, top podcaster, an in-demand speaker. You have a great t-shirt company, great coffee company. I'm like, yeah, but at the end of the day, I'm still outside picking up crap for my 14-pound dog, and I still take out the garbage. So I'm not all that and a bag of chips. And so I just let people know, I'm just me. And like something that I just did a post today on my blog. Somebody asked me, what is the greatest piece of advice you've ever been given? And it was by Gary. And he said, your legacy will always be more valuable than your currency. So now everything that I do is so when my daughter has kids and I have grandkids and all that, and they say, well, tell me about grandpa. Well, he was a world changer. That's what I look. I'm more worried about legacy than I am celebrity.
Right. I agree with that, man. Now, folks, we wrap back here an ad from the Doug Flutie Jr. Autism Foundation. So let's hear from them. At the Doug Flutie Autism Jr. Foundation in Massachusetts, people are receiving hope. The organization was established in 1998 by Doug Flutie, a former quarterback for Boston College and the NFL, and his wife, Lori, in the memory of their son, Dougie, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. The goal of the Flutie Foundation is to improve the quality of life for those with autism and their families. Their biggest action they like to do is give grants and host their annual Stars on the Spectrum golf event Our goal is to offer chances for physical and social activity outside of work or school, a path for education or employment during the day, and the resources needed to always feel safe, supported, and informed. The Doug Flutie Jr. Autism Foundation says. The Doug Flutie Jr. Autism Foundation says. Make sure to visit them on their website, www.flutiefoundation.org, or follow them on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or even YouTube to see all the stars they have to offer. Finally, this was my testimony. This would be my testimony for the Doug Flutie Jr. Autism Foundation. All right, folks, we're back, and you might meet Doug Flutie there. You never know. So, Rich, I do want to get more into a book you decided to publish, and that was A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. So, when did you decide to publish A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light?
Okay, before we get into that, I just got to say, Doug Flutie, I love you. You're amazing. Even though you broke my Miami Hurricanes heart. But I love you, Doug. I love everything you're doing. You're a true
Richard,
man of honor.
Give me 1 sec. No, he has not allowed me. Well, it won't be too long, but I'm just in the middle of something. That's what I was asking.
Oh, we can do it while you're doing whatever. You don't have to be there for it. We just need to check.
No, I was in the middle of an interview. That's why I was asking.
Oh, you're good.
That's why I'm sorry, guys.
No, we'll come back around.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're back. Go ahead. You say any shout out to Doug Flutie?
Yep, I just wanted to say he's a true man of honor, and I think he's probably one of the greatest inspirations. Him and Jim Kelly from the Buffalo Bills are probably two of the greatest inspirations, and they both played for the Bills. So.
Hey, it works out well then, right? So yeah. So when did you decide to publish A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light?
Well, what happened was, and this goes back to my lunch with Gary Vaynerchuk, I told him, I said, all right, I don't know what to do with myself now. My career's over. Whatever I was doing, my career's over. I want to help people, but I don't know how to help them out. He says, well, first I want you to write a book. And I'm like, yeah, I did tell you I'm a nice, great job out, right? He's like, yeah, I don't care. He says, I want you to write a book. I want you to tell all the dirty shit you've ever done in your life. I'm like, huh? What? He's like, I want you to go watch the movie 8 Mile. I want you to watch the last 2 minutes. Then I want you to give me a call back and we'll talk about it. So I went home, watched 8 Mile. And in the movie, I don't know if you've seen 8 Mile or not. Eminem is in a rap battle, and he tells the guy he's battling against everything he's ever done wrong, all the bad stuff about him. And Eminem finally says, well, now I told you about me. You can't talk about me anymore because I already told you everything. And I talked Garrett. He's like, that's what you need to do. Put something out like that. He's like, because when somebody comes back and says, you were a drug addict. Yeah, but now I'm clean 30 years. I got a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful children, a beautiful business. He's like, so you can, once you put this book out, now nobody can ever tell you of who you are. And now you can literally start your life over again. So that's exactly what I did. I wrote my book called A Hero's Journey from Darkness to Light. I put it out. And the same day I launched that is the day that I launched my first podcast. And the last book, it hit #1 twice on Amazon. Every chapter is a story of my life. The last part of the chapter is what not to do. So each chapter is a learning chapter. And then the last 2 chapters are, what is addiction? What does it look like? It's not what you think it looks like. And then the last chapter is, what is depression? What does it look like? It's not what you think it looks like. So it's actually, the last 2 chapters are actually a teaching book, and 100% of the proceeds go to help people struggling with homelessness and mental health issues. So I don't make any money off of the t-shirts, hats, anything that I do. 100% of the profits go to
you all do it for the good in your heart because you actually care.
Yeah, and it's all about the journey. It's all about paying it forward and changing lives. Money will come, but money is. My uncle died. My uncle was amazing. I think he didn't even graduate 4th grade, and he retired as a multimillionaire. And before he died at an early age, he said, you know what? He said, I got all this money. I can't buy back a single day. I wish I would have spent more time with my family. So for me, that changed my life to thinking, all this is fun, but it's all about the journey and having fun in life and helping others while you can help others. You know.
I would agree with that, brother. I wouldn't. That's why I like this show, because I get to meet people. I'm not in it for the money. Are you kidding me? That's at the bottom of the food chain. It's a great luxury to have, granted, and I'm glad I'm making some money off of it. But when I lay my head down, no, that's not the goal. It's that destigmatize autism, because I see a need for it and I want to do something good for the world and leave a legacy of my own.
Yeah, but one thing I realized, and somebody once told me, because you guys, I'm not on video right now, but I actually have an empty cup that I keep purposely empty in my on my desk, and the reason why it's empty is because when I turn it over, I can't pour from an empty cup. I can't help somebody else if my cup is empty, and that's where I first made the first mistake in my first 3 years of podcasting. I didn't monetize it, and that means I can't help somebody if I'm paying out and I don't have money coming in. There's no way I can donate to the Flutie Foundation. There's no way I would be able to buy food for families if I don't have the money myself. And I think so for a lot of people out there, they want to give, but then you realize, hey, I have to get some money coming in because I cannot pour if my cup is empty. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, 100%, brother, 100%. So you also do speaking engagements. So what is the one message you hope people take from your speaking engagements?
Well, when I go speak on stages, and I've spoken all over the world and so many different, I actually have my own event that I hold every year called Today I Decide. It's my opening speech. My opening words are every place I go. So listen, 99% of you, just get back on your phone. This is not for you. This is not meant for you, because I'm here to speak to the one person that is struggling today. And most people put down their phone. They're either like, wait a minute, did he just tell me that this is not for me? Why is this not for me? And it hushes the room, and I tell them, I'm not here for your wallet. I'm here for your heart. And then everybody's like, you can hear a pin fall, because that's what I'm all about. I'm all about going for that heart. I'm all about, maybe that person, they didn't want to come, but somebody said, you know what, let's go to this event. Maybe they were going to take their own life when they got home, but maybe if they heard something that I said, like for me, the t-shirt I wear anytime I go on speakers engagements is called Today I Decide. And what that means is the three most important words in the English language are today I decide. So whether you decide, like I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, whether you decide to be the victor or the victim, that's your decision. Whether you choose to fail or succeed, that's your decision. We are our decisions. So that's why anytime I go out, you'll see my t-shirt, it'll say, today I decide, ? And I have that t-shirt and I go anywhere and people are like, what'd you decide? I was like, to talk to you today. And it kind of opens up that talking. So
brother, I'd love to speak for your event sometime.
I'd love to have you and Tucker Bearden on together. You guys would crush.
All right. Well, after this airs, let's talk.
Yeah. So like I said, that's that for me, if anybody's listening to this, that's my spiel is today you get to choose to be the victim or the victor. Just choose.
Yes, sir. Now we got to talk more on September 11th, man, because it is very interesting. So how, after now that you've seen the Twin Towers and knowing that you changed after people were dying in the Twin Towers, how do you now celebrate September 11th?
Well, where I'm sitting, if I go sit on my front porch, I'm actually sitting in the shadows of where the Twin Towers once stood. I'm 10 minutes away from Manhattan. So we all knew people that were in the buildings that day. And I have a tattoo from 9/12 that's on my arm, that every day I see it, I think of all those people. I think of the 342 firemen that ran in and didn't come home. And that's the day, 8:46 is when I cried out to the Lord. I said, Lord, forgive me. I know I've screwed up so many times. I'm about to getting thrown out of the military next weekend. I'm getting thrown out of the military for a second time. I said, Lord, give me another chance, please. And I promise you, I will dedicate the rest of my life to helping people that can't help themselves. And thankfully, they kept me, and I became Soldier of the Year and all that good stuff. But for 9/11, it's bittersweet because I know the people that lost their life. But if it wasn't for 9/11, I don't think I would be alive today. So for me, it saved me. So for me, it's very bittersweet. But I will watch everything that's on TV about it because I want that feeling again. And it seems that after the years are going, you're seeing less and less and less about it. Now it's just a historical moment.
Yeah, it's
But
a
for
historical
me,
moment that we think, oh my gosh, it's tragedy in a story. It's not, no, that shouldn't be it. It should
yeah.
be, oh my gosh, this was a travesty. Let's teach our kids about it. There's been movies about it, granted, but there needs to be more movies, remakes. It needs to be jammed down our throats. I don't like people jamming things down my throat, but I think this does.
Well, like I walk every morning. I walk in the cemetery every single morning. And in part of the cemetery, they have the hundreds of people that were lost that day. But then they also have a twisted piece of metal that was part of the World Trade Center. And I touch it every day to remind me of that promise I made in September 2001. So for me, every day is 9/12 for me every day. And that's why every day I wake up and say, okay, you promised to help people that can't help themselves. Now you got to step up to the plate and do it.
Exactly. Because there are some people who needed you to step up, who need you now to step up to the plate. You couldn't do it, but now that you can, people need you, man.
Well, even like me and you, what we do, we're 99% of the time we're not going to know if we affected somebody. So it's just something like I don't feel like getting up and posting on social media every day. I don't feel like doing interview sometimes you wake up, you're like, damn, I don't want to do another interview today. But then I'll hear somebody say, you know what, Rich, what you said, I was about to take my own life yesterday, but something you said really inspired me. So I realize now that, the times that I don't want to do something is when I need to do something because there's a reason why I'm doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know I have a person right now in Florida. I'll give her name. I don't think she'll care. Jen Hardy. Met her at Podfest. Lovely woman. She thinks I'm this amazing person. The moment I stop, she won't think about it. I'm not trying to make her think I'm amazing because I want to be famous. No. I want her to think I'm amazing because I'm changing that person's life, for crying out loud. She has two people on the spectrum, and she thinks I'm this amazing person who's dealt with similar situations. We've dealt with people who have taken advantage of us and have been deceptive. And I've done a full episode on that for listeners. See 239, you've been tricked. But it's relevant, and she needs that support.
Yeah. And there's certain people that they might not ever say something to you. Like I was walking in my town one day and they had a sign up and there was a picture of me. I guess it was Memorial Day or one of the holidays, 4th of July, maybe. And they got in their town, they hang up big pictures of me when I was in the military. And I was walking past it and some lady is looking up at the picture. So I stand next to her and I'm looking up with her. I'm like, man, he's a good looking guy. She looks at me, looks at the picture. She's like, you're that Rick Kaufman guy. She's like, I listen to you every day and I find you so motivational and I share it all the time. I'm just afraid to say something. So for me, it's like, okay, and she was like a 70-year-old Spanish lady. So, but for me, it's like, that's when I realized, well, there's people out there, listening to us that they may not say anything, but, maybe we're giving them a little bit of hope. Because I tell everybody, somebody asks me, well, if you can pick what you do in one sentence. And I'll just say I went from dope dealer to hope dealer. So, that's, and I realize that somebody out there, they may not say something, but even if we don't show up, they're going to wonder, are they okay? Is Sam okay? I haven't heard from them today. So there's people out there depending on you. You guys don't know it.
You're right. You're 100% right, man. So I know something else you had to go through, and this is something I think, I'm just guessing. I'm not saying he did, or I'm assuming really. Your son went through, I went through, you went through even. I know you did because I heard it. Bullying. How did you handle getting bullied?
Not, not very well. I do not do very well with bullies because what happened was I would walk home from school every day from ages like 7 to 9, and I would get beat up every day. I was wearing hand-me-down clothes. I couldn't speak right. My ADD was bad. I couldn't talk to people. So I'd get my ass kicked every day for like 2 years. And then one day, they did it again, and there was a bike sitting there, and I just picked up the bike and I just started slapping every one of them with the bike. And I put like 3 kids into a hospital. They never picked on me again. But then I decided, I don't like bullies. I don't like bullies because I believe that hurt people, hurt people. So if they're bullying, there's a reason, something's going on at home that they're bullying. So I don't like bullies, and I tell my daughter it all. You can do a lot of things and it won't bother me, but if I see you bullying somebody, we're going to have a major issue. Because Daddy served his country for 23 years, protecting people that can't protect themselves. So I don't like bullies whatsoever, and I'll pull up on a bully in a second. So, if you want to go, we can go now. So I'm not, and I don't like bullies, and especially cyber bullies. It's a big thing because in my town, I'm in charge of. It used to be called the DARE program, but now it's called the Alliance, the LEAD program, Municipal Alliance, and I'm in charge of that for my town. And I'm seeing how bad teenagers and kids are being bullied, because it used to be like if you got bullied, all right, you get bullied an hour after school and an hour before school. But now with phones and computers, the bullying just doesn't stop. And a lot of kids, on average, now just check this out. On average, 5,000 adolescents attempt suicide every day in the United States. 5,000 a day. And a lot of it is from cyberbullying. So I think that's something that doesn't really get talked a lot, but it's something that if you're a parent, you need to really try to keep in check. You know what I mean?
And what's very aggravating is cyberbullies are cowards. Because listen, I get that I've been bullied, and I shouldn't acknowledge this, but I do acknowledge the fact that if you are going to bully me, do it to my face. I mean, if you're gonna jab me in the back with pencils, then I at least can say that, okay, you at least have some dignity by not hiding behind a screen. You probably don't have a lot, granted. You have a 1% probably of dignity, but behind a screen, that's just wrong.
And there's a lot of keyboard warriors out there. There's a lot of them out there. And I always say, if you're going to have some, I mean, if you don't like me, if I say something that aggravates you, I have a lot of people that, they may disagree with me on social media, and then I'll direct message them and I'll be like, all right, I see you responded this way. What did I say and how did it affect you? And how can we work this out? And a lot of times they become my biggest critics, become my biggest fans, because I realize that hurt people. So I think sometimes we might have to do that with people that, because I realize that, we might rub people the wrong way, and they may come off the wrong way. So we might just have to, give a little bit of grace and say, because a lot of times if you send a text, you could the words may be the same, but if there's no context, it sounds totally different. And I think that the big thing is, with social media, it's people can get off and you see somebody might say something jokingly, and then you take it seriously, and then all of a sudden there's a Twitter war. So I think we got to take a lot of it with a grain of salt. And like I think even Hormozy said it, in his latest book. He said that if 80 years from now, if they're not going to give you, if they're not going to be at your funeral, who cares what they say about you now? It doesn't make a difference. And that's something I've taken in my life. And I'm like, if it's not going to matter, 5 months from now, 5 years from now, it's not worth my 5 minutes from now.
Yeah. Well, Richard, if it makes you feel any better, I'd be at your funeral.
Oh, I love you, brother.
No problem. And you're talking about getting your butt beat. I know they were mostly wasteless, but I know one that changed your life. It's according to you, this African American boy, you called him the worst word alive. You called someone African American. That's all I'm going to say. He pummeled you, got you a beer, and now you guys are best friends.
Yeah, and that was
Please tell us about that.
Yeah, and in my book, it's called How I Was Cured from Racism. Because what happened was, I'm a street kid from Jersey. I got a smart mouth, and he was from I think he was from Alabama, and he was like 6'5", jacked. I mean, he was like jacked. He was there's strong, then there's country strong, and he was country strong, and he was my roomie, and like I said, I'm from Jersey, smart mouth kid, 140 pounds soaking wet. And he kept yelling at me because I kept messing up. I kept screwing up and getting him in trouble. And I said the N-word. And he looked at me. And he's like, I know you didn't just say that to me. Say it again. Because I said it again. So he proceeds to shut the door, took off his hat, and he pummeled me. I was no lie for like 2 hours straight. And I was bloody, beaten up, pulped. And of course the door was closed, so nobody knew what went on. He said, sit down. And I sat down. And then he got 2 beers, popped open a beer. Said, let me tell you about my grandma. Let me tell you about my great grandpa that were sharecroppers. And then he said, my grandmother and my mother walked with MLK. And then he went through his lineage. And from that day on, I have never said that word again. Unless I'm listening to my Tupac, unless I'm listening to my NWA, and I'm rapping and singing. But other than that, I got cured from racism that day. And from that day on, I don't see color. My wife says, you see that? I'm like, and I have a friend, his name is Joe, and he's a police officer. He used to come to my store all the time. And somebody came in and say, hey, have you seen Joe? And I'm like, Joe, I know so many Joes. Which one? He's like, the black guy. I'm like, Joe, the black guy. I'm like, I don't know him. It's like the police officer. I'm like, oh, Joe, I know Joe. So I don't see color at all anymore. And for me, it's either in the military, you're either white. I mean, you're either green, or there's no other color. There's no black or no white. There's green. And I think, and then when I got a little bit older, and of course I became homeless again just for being an idiot, there was a black family that took me in and taught me what it was like to grow up in a black house. And I lived with them for like 3 years. And they taught me, how the matriarchs, the patriarchs of the family, they taught me, what they went through, what they go through on a daily basis. So and my wife says, you know what, you think you're black. I'm like, no, because I identify. I said, but I've hung out with them all the time. They're my people. So for me, like people say, well, I mean, you're 54 years old and you're listening to Tupac, NWA, Dre. I'm like, yeah, and because I don't see color. So
why not listen to it?
But people will, like, I'm at the gym and I'm singing the words, and people are looking at me like, wait a minute, he's singing Tupac with all the curses in it. I'm like, yeah, because that's how I'm hearing in my ear. And they got aggravated. But like when me and him, and I write this in the book, when me and him were walking across each other, he would call me Cracker. I'd call him Spade, Jungle Bunny. He'd call me Whitey. But because we had that love for each other, that we became like brothers. And I'm still that way with him today. He'll call me up, be like, yo, what's slacking, cracker? You know what I mean? Because I don't see color. I don't see it even to this day. I don't see it because we're all people. And whatever people think, Black Lives Matter, blah, 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 like all lives matter. I believe
yes, all lives matter, brother. I can amen on that one, man. It doesn't matter what skin color you are. I was raised that if they have purple skin, you go see who they are on the inside, not on the outside, man.
Yeah, but I believe if you have to add a color to lives matter, then you're the racist.
That's pretty outspoken, but I might have to agree with you on that one.
So that's just me. But and I said, that's why I think a lot of people can, because I don't appeal to white people. I don't I appeal to everybody because I am like, there used to be a professional wrestler. I forget. I think it was Dusty Rhodes, and they used to call him the All-American Man because everybody can relate to Dusty Rhodes. As you can tell,
you can relate to him.
I'm a wrestling fan, so
I know. But let me. Why? So what? Let's get into wrestling a little bit. Why is Ric Flair your favorite pro wrestler of all time?
Because, okay, my two favorite wrestlers of all time, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, because all you had to do was give him a mic, and he was magic on the mic. Dusty Rhodes was magic on the mic. I mean, there's certain wrestlers, The Rock, that you put them on a mic, you just let them roll. And I love the wrestlers because they told a story. Again, Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes, they would tell Dusty, son of a plumber. Ric Flair, and I know I've met him a couple of times, and Ric Flair, the person you see on TV is the same guy you're going to see out at the bar. Ric Flair is Ric Flair. But you knew that if he got on a mic, he was going to tell you a story. Dusty Rhodes, if he picks up the mic, you're going to get involved in the story. Same thing with The Rock. You give him a mic, you're going to get involved in the story. And I love storytellers, and I think those three guys are like the ultimate storytellers for me.
Well, how about you check out these current wrestling? If you haven't, check out L.A. Knight. Yeah. That guy can tell a story.
Yep, and he took a lot, and you can see he took a lot from, he took a lot from The Rock. He took a lot from all these guys from the Attitude Era. You know what I mean?
He did, but in a way, he made it his own. Like, he may have copied off some stuff, granted, but I see resemblance, but I don't see The Rock 2.0 in him. I don't see Stone Cold Steve Austin 2.0 in him. I see L.A. Knight.
And I was just watching. I knew we were going to be on, so I watched his 8-hour documentary last night called The Wrestlers, and it's amazing that in wrestling today, there's not a lot of people they tell stories. Like the Bloodline, I love that storyline, but I think all the big great matches in history, they all had a storyline, and I think that's what's missing from professional wrestling today is creating a story. Like I said, I've had Jake the Snake on, Mick, and it's amazing that they're all great storytellers. And I think if you want to become successful in life, if you can learn to tell a story, then the money is just going to come pouring in because there's a lot missing from storytellers.
Yeah, you can be a book and share knowledge without even having to read. That's pretty cool if I say so.
Yeah, that's why the podcasters, I think a lot of people, they don't realize how important podcasting can be to a person's career or speaking career or anything like that. Because you can have somebody like me that's a 9th grade dropout, but now all of a sudden I can have David Meltzer. I can have the authors of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I can have you come on the show and I can get taught anything that I want to know as long as I have a platform. It's like getting a PhD for free.
Exactly. I'd agree with you. So I heard something about the NCO Creed that it's apparently through veterans. So I want to learn about it. So tell us about it, man.
NCO Creed, what it means is, say if I become a sergeant And Sam, it becomes my guy. He becomes my private. That means from that moment you become my team member. My goal is to get you where I am at so I can go higher. My goal is not to keep pushing you down, but to raise you higher. My goal is to make sure that you're going to college, make sure that your relationships are good, making sure you're healthy mentally, physically, spiritually. My goal is to take you further than you would ever taken yourself. And for me, my guys knew, because I always believed in, I think it was Zig Ziglar said, I might be wrong, but he said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And my guys know, Sam, if you're struggling with something, let's go out for lunch. Let's talk about it. I got your back. You need me. I got you. And once somebody knows that you truly care about them, they will literally run through a wall for you. They would literally run through gunfire through you, because they know that you actually care about them as a person and you care about their career. You're just not looking at a slot. And I believe there's a lot of people in the military that and I've said this to plenty of people. I say, sir, I respect your rank, but I don't respect you at all. But I do respect your rank. And for me, as an NCO, I believe that I want to take care of you. And if I had to, if I know somebody is shooting at Sam, I'm willing to take a bullet for Sam so he can go home and be with his family. I'd give my life for Sam. And that's what I think an NCO. NCO stands for non-commissioned officer. I think that's what the creed means to me.
And that's something we all need. I feel like I think we all need someone who is like that, someone who's willing to take a bullet for us, someone not because we're trying to play the blame and be like he did it, no, but to be like, you know what, man, take one for the team. I'll help you out on this one. Well, we're going to be in this together.
But then I also told my guys, because they know, I always tell them I was a screw up. I got in trouble a lot. I got thrown out almost twice, but I got thrown out once for sure. But I tell them, they're like, you got one screw up. That's all you get. I'm like, you can screw up. You got one, but don't lie to me. Then it's a wrap. It's a wrap. If you say, Sarge, I got drunk last night. I can't come to drill. I promise this will never happen again. I'll cover you. I'll cover for you. But if you lie to me and say, I got drunk, but no, you're at your girlfriend's house and you just didn't feel like coming to drill, and I find out about it, well, that's going to be now you're in a whole different world of hurt. But my guys know, hey, Sarge got my back. I know he's got me. If I need help, he's there for me. And even like some of the guys will still message me, you were the best NCO I ever had. You were the best sergeant I ever had. You knew, you really cared about me, and I love you. So once I hear stuff like that, then I know I did the right thing.
I think you did, period, in that situation. Now, folks, we're right back right here in Adam from the Rock 96.1 radio station. So let's get to it. We want to thank 96.1 The Query, especially David and Dan Hayes, for being a gold sponsor for our Summerfest 96 Point Run. Resides in Bloomington, Indiana. And like Autism Rocks and Rolls, they rock and roll too. Visit their website, rock961fm.com. Listen to them live or on the website, or catch them on the radio in your car. If you like Kiss, Queen, 80s rock, or ZZ Top, I think you have found your station. 96.1 supports our veterans like our guest today, so you should support them too. Visit 96.1 and keep rocking. Yeah! All right, folks, and we're back, and you'll definitely rock out if you check them out. So I found something in your book that you really didn't get into. I want to ask more about your puppy.
By the way, I'm a big Kiss fan, so love you, Kiss. Love you.
Oh, heck yeah. You can't go wrong with that. I agree with you on that one, man. They're a killer. I got a couple of their songs. You can't go wrong with rocking and rolling all night. Let's put it that way.
Exactly.
So your puppy, though, you mentioned him in the book, Tank. Can you tell us more about your puppy, Tank?
Yeah. For me, when I grew up, I never could have a pet because I think we moved 14 times in my 12 years. So we were never allowed to have a pet. And I always wanted to have a pet. So I found an abandoned dog, and he took my heart, and his name was Tank. I had to name him Tank because I was a tanker. So I'm like, come on, what cooler name was that? And he was a brindle boxer, and I love brindle boxers.
Yeah, they
And
are
he
cool.
was,
One more time.
and he was,
Ain't nothing in here, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, dude, it's our job.
I know, I get it's a job. Hey, ain't nothing in here. All right, brother, we're back. So, but I'll be honest though, I'm more of a pit bull and a Rottweiler guy.
yeah, I just think there's something about a boxer, a pit, or a rot where you just look at him, you're like, if I put him, he's gonna tear my head off. And they're so muscular and lean. There's something about those kind of animals. They're just beautiful to look at. And Tank was a beautiful dog.
Oh yeah, and here's the two. People say those are the most ruthless dogs. You better watch out for them. Are you kidding me? What I've seen, they're gentle giants. And dogs, it depends on how you raise them, not the breed. Are you kidding me?
Even Caesar Milan, he even says that it's not the dog, it's the owner. And that's even if you take it back. Even I just somehow I started a Facebook war, but that we were talking about how if you have bad kids, if you're a parent, you need to take some responsibility for that. If your kids are out of control, if you raised them, so it may not be all your fault, but it's a lot of your fault. You know what I mean? So same thing with dog owners. They say if you can't take care of a dog, don't have a dog.
Oh yeah, and if you can't, it's the same with the children. If you can't take care of a kid, don't have a kid.
Yep. So
I gotta talk to you about someone else you met that I know too, and I think you're closer to him than me, but I still like him. Don't get me wrong. I was on his podcast too. Nowhere to go but up. Sean Douglas. So how'd you get to meet Sean Douglas?
Who? I never heard of him. No, I love Sean. Sean has an amazing. He's an amazing person. First of all, if it wasn't for his book, I would not have become the public speaker that I am. His ebook literally got me booked so many places. And he taught me how to be a better speaker. But not only that, when he was my first sponsor ever for my old podcast, and he had a brand called Live Your Brand clothing line, and he was the first person to ever sponsor me. So I love Sean. Now he's retired, and now he's a three-time TEDx speaker. He has where he actually teaches people how to start, monetize, run, and get your podcast ranked. So he has a brand new course, and he also does that. So Sean is the guy that does it all, and he believed in me from day one. And if somebody ever says I want to start a podcast, who do I go to? Sean Douglas is the man.
Oh yeah, he is the man. And I admire his story too, from going into what he went through based on what I've heard from a outsider's perspective and a limited basis. Dang, he's doing pretty well for himself right now, isn't he? He's got lovely children and I think a wife, right?
Yep, he's got a beautiful bride, beautiful family, and he's I think he's probably the only 3-time return guest that I've ever had on the show.
Wow, you guys have really hit it off. I'll make sure to tell him that we hit it off again and we reconnected.
Yeah, and that's the thing is anybody that's ever been on my show, I have relationships with now. I've built generational relationships. And I think that's what makes my show a little bit better, because anybody, like, I can reach out. Like, I'm actually re-releasing tomorrow. There's an Iron Chef that was on my show, Simon Majumdar from the Food Network.
Oh, I had him too. I know him.
Yep, I can actually reach out to him and ask for a recipe, and he'll send it to me, because I built that relationship over the years. So, it's all about, like, I can reach out to Steve Sims and be like, hey, I got a question. I could reach out to Kiyosaki. Hey, I got a question, bro, because I built those relationships over the years, and I've become part of their ecosystem. Like once I knew I had you on the show, I followed you on Facebook, any social media platforms. I followed you. I started promoting you. I would get involved in your DMs. I would get involved in commenting and sharing, because I believe that I want to build generational relations with every guest that I have on my show. And I think that what makes me a little bit different. That's how me and Sean have built it up over the years, because I'm very intentional with
And it's
everything
natural.
I do.
It's not forced where everyone's, one person's doing the one side. They're just saying, you're my friend. You're my friend. We're both friends. Yeah, I think so too.
But like for me, I forget, I wish I could remember who it was. He was on my show, and he says, when we hung up, because I always, after every episode I'm on, I ask, how can I do better? What can I do better? Who could you introduce me to? But he said, this was December 31st, 2000 of last year. He said, I want you to pick 2 words for 2023 and just focus on those 2 words, and you'll see how you explode. And my 2 words for this year were intention and attention. Those are my 2 words. And since I started doing that, now we're a top voice on LinkedIn, and we're a top 4% Facebook page on Facebook, just because everything I do is intentional and trying to get attention. So for me, and I tell everybody, if it's not God, family, friends, business, and podcasting, I say no to everything else. Those are the only 4 things that I'm going to say yes to, because everything I want to do, I want it to be intentional. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, 100%, buddy. So we'll wrap her up here. These are just for fun. So what is your paradise meal or favorite food, and why is it your favorite?
Surf and turf, just because it brings me back to eating out of garbage cans, to remind me this is how far you've come. Be grateful for where you're at now.
Now with surf and turf, I meant to ask earlier, does it have to be like a certain meal with surf and turf? Does that have to be the filet mignon and lobster? Can it be steak and fish, or does it have to be that?
No, it's more normally filet mignon and lobster. So, but even there's a restaurant by my house. It's a Spanish restaurant, and they have paella. Oh my God, it's so good with all the different fish. So I'll take that meal too.
All right, awesome. Now, what about your favorite movie or TV show, and why do you like it?
Okay, this is going to sound off the wall, totally crazy. My favorite movie of all time, and I watch it every time, is with Denzel Washington. It's called The Autobiography of Malcolm X. And the reason why it touched me so much, it's basically just one scene, but I have to watch the whole movie because of the one scene. It's where he's sitting in prison, and somebody asked him, why are you so happy? You're sitting in prison. He says, because the prison holds my body, but my mind is free. And that affects me. I think about that all the time. That's why anytime, it's like a 4-hour movie, but every time it's on, I want to watch that, because it's amazing what he went through. And in the end, how he realized there's no black, there's no white. It's all just people. So that was my favorite movie. And most people are like, huh? I'm like, yeah. And my wife's like, yeah, every time it's on, she's stuck watching it. So she puts me in the other room when it comes on.
Dang, she's probably like, get out of here.
Yeah. I've seen this for like 1,000 times. That and the movie Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. I just love that movie.
And what about is the Germany trip you mentioned earlier your favorite vacation, or like do you have another favorite trip that involves the military or not as a trip? And if you do, why did you enjoy that particular trip very much?
Well, this has nothing to do with the military. It was my wife's birthday, and I wanted to get her something nice. She loves Barry Manilow. I think we've seen him like 4 times. And I'm like, what would be cooler than seeing Barry Manilow in Las Vegas? So we got tickets and we went to go see Barry. My favorite part of the whole trip was there was a gondola ride, and it was just me and her. And there was some Italian singer just singing to me and her. And just holding her hand for that 5 minutes has been probably the greatest vacation I've ever been on, because it was just me and her holding her hand, spending time with my bride. And I think that's the best part of any vacation I've ever been on.
That 5 minutes is probably valuable to the both of you. It's probably, would you not say, and I'm just asking, probably one of the most valuable times in your life?
Probably, if not holding my newborn daughter, uh, changing her diaper for the first time. That would be number one. But that 5 minutes in that gondola, and I'm a guy that'll cry at the drop of a hat. I'm a big wussy, but that was probably one of my greatest moments in my life. And for her, it was probably like, yeah, we were on a trip, we were on the water, yeah, blah, blah, blah. But for me, anytime I can get to hold my wife's hand, even just for 3 to 5 minutes, it makes my life worth living.
That's incredible, man. I think you answered the sentimental memory. So now what I would just like is just a funny memory that made you fall on the floor laughing. And let's try this. I got one more question, and you already answered part of it. So now you just need to answer the second part, which is a funny memory that made you fall on the floor laughing.
Okay. I just moved to New Jersey. I just got with my wife, and she's at work, and I'm like, all right, because I can't cook worth a damn. That's why I need people like Simon Majumdar and Brian Jacobs in my life. I can't cook worth a damn. So I grabbed 2 eggs, and I'm like, all right, they're hard-boiled eggs. 3 minutes in the microwave for me should be more than enough to cook 2 eggs. So I'm sitting in the kitchen. I put it in for 3 minutes. All of a sudden, I hear pop, pop. I'm thinking people are shooting at me. So I hit the floor. I'm scared deathless. And all of a sudden, I just smelled something burning. I get up, and there's the eggs exploded all over the microwave. And I called my wife. I was like, you're not going to believe what just happened. And she'll never let me forget that. So, guys, if you ever put eggs in the microwave, no longer than 20 seconds, all right, guys. But that was probably the funniest moment that I've had. I would literally laughed out loud at myself.
Yeah, that may have been a little bit of a blunder. And at least it wasn't something like deadly that could have, exploded, like something like something that got too bad, I guess, that could cause a fire. Something to be grateful for, right?
I learned my lesson. I learned my lesson.
Exactly. Well, Richard, I think that's all. Is there any comments or any closing remarks, buddy, you want to say, or anything you'd like to promote?
No, but I just want to say, guys, if you're listening to this podcast, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you leave a written review, not just a heart or because your written review means 5 times more important than just a 5-star review. And let Sam let him know how he's doing, because sometimes just hearing those comments on the days that you're down can really push you up. But for me, guys, I just want to say you can reach out to me. If you just type in Vertical Momentum Podcast, I'm everywhere. If you need somebody to listen to, if you need somebody to talk to, I'm here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can slide into my DMs. You can call me. I'm here for you, because I would rather talk to you than talk about you at your funeral. I would rather hear your bullshit than your eulogy. And that's what I just want to say, guys. I'm here for you. And whenever you talk to me, whatever you say stays between me and you. It goes no further. And I have zero judgment, knowing from my past, I have no judgment whatsoever. I just want to be here for you guys.
Well, Richard, I think you've been here for a lot of us, including a lot of people I think are going to listen to this. So thank you for the work you do, and have a great day, buddy.
I love you, brother, and thank your mom for everything she does, for setting everything up. I truly appreciate her.